everybody, welcome. I'm your host, and my name is Professor Khalil Amani. We're back. Welcome to my channel. It's a new channel. It's a rebuilding channel. Please subscribe if you would like to. I would like your subscription. Welcome, Khalil Amani's World 100. That's right. Beautiful day today, and we want to get it in. So let's just turn the music off and let's get to it. Let's just get right to it. Again, I am your host, and my name is Professor Khalil Amani. And I want to talk about my father, my daddy, my Abba, the head nigga in charge of my family. That's right. I want to talk to you about him because he deserves more. He might even deserve better. But in times past, I talked about my father as a very mean man that I did not like as a child. And those sentiments were true. My earliest remembrances of my father take me back to Wiesbaden, Germany, as a 4-year-old child getting beat for throwing paper helicopters out of a 3rd-story window, wherein my dad beat me and my 2 older brothers with his military belt, grabbing me by one leg upside down and whipping me until I peed myself. That's the narrative that has been floating around on YouTube because I told that story. But that's not the complete story of my father. It just isn't. But there are those that would run with that story. A story that's 61 years old. I'm 65. A story that's 61 years old and tried to paint the narrative that what happened to me 61 years ago still affects my life today. What do you expect from YouTubers? The ideal of the concept known as context is a very fleeting idea. That there are people, there are YouTubers that would define you in terms of a singular incident from 61 years ago. No context needed. But I want to talk to you about my father on this one and put some context on the times and the era in which my father grew up, lived, and had children. You know, there are those, and you've heard this said before, you've heard people say, you've heard black people talk about slavery and said that if they were a slave, what they wouldn't or would accept. We've heard people like Kanye West say that slavery was a choice, that you could choose to be a slave or choose not to be a slave. Pure ignorance. Similarly, there are YouTubers that would say what they would or wouldn't do if they were a slave. Not YouTubers, people. I've heard black people myself say shit like, shit, if I lived back in slavery days, shit, I wish that cracker would. I wish a nigga would. I ain't taking no ass whoopings from Master Tom or Master Malloy. See, I couldn't be no slave. I couldn't be no slave because I'd be a dead motherfucker because I ain't taking that shit. You know, you hear all this what we call Monday morning armchair quarterbacking about slavery. Niggas talking about what they would and wouldn't accept if they were a slave. As though their actions had no ramifications for the children and their parents and other relatives. That what one slave could do can get the rest of the slaves in trouble too. So that's foolish talk whenever a black person claims to know what they would or wouldn't do if they were in slavery times. It's stupid talk. Well, why do I say that? Because there are YouTubers, women specifically, that would say if they were married to an abusive man in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, what they would and wouldn't accept or do. You know, I'm talking about people today in 2025 hearing my story that my father in the year 1964, when I was 4 years old, picked me up by one leg and whipped me until I peed. You got YouTubers out here telling what they would have done if I was their child. A woman YouTuber saying what she wouldn't and would do if somebody did that to her child. She would go and do something to her husband. Well, first of all, you're in love with your husband, so you don't want to hurt him. Second of all, you love your children, so you do want them to not be hurt also. But you have these 2025 armchair quarterbacks talking about what they would have done to their husband if their husband beat their child until he peed himself. No contextualization, no thought about the times in which an event like that occurred. Oh yeah. Like what was going on in 1964 is the same as what's going on in 2025. No context. Just talking ignorant as fuck. That's why when they finish talking like that, they have to private those videos. Because they know they're talking out their ass. You spend an hour talking only to put it on private. You put it on private because you know you're out of order. You know you're talking a bunch of bullshit. Context, people. I always preach context. And I recently wrote on my community wall, what they call abuse, what they call child abuse in 2025 was not child abuse in the 60s and 50s and the 70s. It was a different time, a different era, different laws, distinct customs. Women didn't have the freedom in 1960s that they have in 2025. And so when you hear a story, my story about my daddy beating me in 1964 until I peed myself, and you hear a YouTuber woman claiming what she would have done if she were my mother against my father, she's just talking out of her ass because she gives the conversation no cultural context. It goes back to the slave. It goes back to black people today talking about what they would have done if they was a slave. you wouldn't have done a motherfucking thing but tried to show out and got your leg or your arm cut off or got hung from a tree. That's all. The baddest nigga in slavery times would have just got hung if he got out of order. That's all. That's all. Similarly, the baddest black woman in the 50s and 60s and 70s, if she decided to try to buck up against her husband, she would have found herself missing teeth and beat the fuck up. And when the police came to the door, the police in many instances would have sided with the husband. They would have asked, well, what did she do? What made you punch her in the face and knock her teeth out? And the husband would have said, well, I'm the man of my house, and she didn't listen to me, and I told her to sit down and be quiet, and she didn't, and I punched her out. And many police officers in the 50s, 60s, and 70s would look at that woman and tell that battered woman, obey your husband. You fucked up, lady. And they'll get in their patrol car and they'll go about their business. And so, without context, without an understanding of the sign of the times, without the understanding of a particular era, then you're just talking stupid. When you claim that you would have done something to your husband if he beat your child until he peed himself. In 2025, that might be the case. But in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and the 1970s, women, more specifically black women, knew their place. They knew their place. And to get out of line could mean getting your ass whooped. And black women didn't have the freedoms to do and go and be single, sexy, and free. To be a single lady. Especially if that black woman had children, as my mother had 5 children. She couldn't just get up and say, I'm gone. I'm taking my babies. We're out of here. No, 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 no. They stayed. They stuck it out. They made a way through the violence and through the child abuse. They made a way. That was the times in which black women lived. The 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. Now my father, as I have said and written, he was a bad man. As it relates to his children, he didn't fuck with us or do nothing with us. He was a man that was very stern, a disciplinarian, a military man that didn't take no shit from his children. Does that make him a bad person? Or was he just a man of his time? For a long time, I had to wrestle with why my father was like he was. And to some degree, it's my fault. It's my fault that some of you view my father the way you do, because I put the information out there that he beat me until I peed, that he beat my mother and he beat my siblings. I put that information out there. But on this video, I want to give you a different take on my father. Because many of you listening to this, you were raised in a single household. You were raised fatherless. Some of you never knew your father. And some of you only had fatherly visits once every 2 weeks on Sunday. Some of your fathers were not in the household. And some of your fathers never disciplined you when you needed discipline. It's facts. It's facts. But I want you to understand that when you talk about the way black men raised children in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's light years away from the way children are raised in 2025, in the 21st century, in the new millennium. Women had it rough back in those days. Women couldn't even vote until the 1920s. It was the 19th Amendment to the Constitution via the women's suffrage movement that gave women the right to vote. And so when women today, in 2025, talk that shit about what they would have done if a man violated their children, that's some 2025 conversation. Because if women were so bad, how come it took an amendment to the Constitution, the 19th Amendment, to give them the right to vote if they're so bad? If they ain't taking no shit from the established status quo male men and their misogyny. Yeah. After the women's suffrage movement, out of that, Susan B. Anthony, the Grimke sisters, going back to Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman, all these brilliant women, the women that helped in the abolitionist movement during slavery times. Out of those women, from that line, we get the 20th century women's suffrage movement. And in 1920, these strong women moved America to allow them to vote. The 19th Amendment to the Constitution gave women the right to vote. But they still, I'm talking about women, they were still second-class citizens through the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it would be the late 60s that another movement after the women's suffrage movement, after that movement, another movement would come on the scene. It was called the Women's Liberation Movement. We should read about it. Oh, we're going to talk about my father. But I want to put context on the ideal that a woman in 2025, if she saw her child being abused today, how she would respond versus if she saw her child being abused in 1950, 1960, or 1970. Difference. I said it all started with something called the women's suffrage movement. It was a decade-long struggle in the United States to secure women's right to vote. This movement was part of the broader fight for women's rights and ultimately led to the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution in 1920. You got it? I said it was called the women's suffrage movement. And so women today that come on YouTube and talk rough, rugged, and raw about what they would do to a man who abused their children without mentioning the era in which they live versus the era in which other women live, they're just talking shit. They're talking shit. And from the women's suffrage movement, you get the women's liberation movement, and it was a social and political movement that emerged in the late 1960s and 70s, primarily in industrialized nations, aiming for women's equality and freedom to patriarchal oppression. It advocated for changes in legal, social, and cultural norms impacting areas like reproductive rights, employment, and gender roles. Why do I mention these things? Again, when a woman YouTuber, when a female YouTuber today will come on YouTube and talk about how big and bad they are and what they would not allow a man to do without contextualizing times and eras and decades, they talking shit. It's great that we are in a place and a space in 2025 where women have great rights, and a lot has changed. Women can raise their children, and they can feel safe that if a man gets out of order, they can call the authorities. But it wasn't always like that. In many instances in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the authorities would come to your house and they would automatically side with the man in child abuse and in the abuse of a woman's spouse. They would side with the man. The man could tell the police, it's my house, it's my wife, and she didn't do what I said do, and I beat her, I slapped her around, and the policeman would go, I understand, and leave. I say these things in light of me talking about my father and the way he fathered us. You can't superimpose today's 2025's social mores, ethics, onto what I'm talking about in the 1960s. And so when you hear an ignorant woman YouTuber, when she hears my story, how in 1964 my father picked me up by one leg and beat me until I peed myself. When you hear her relay that story in 2025 and talk about what she would have done to the man that did her child like that, without proper contextualization of the time, the decade, and the era, you're listening to a motherfucking fool. You're listening to a fool. And so while a woman today in 2025 might start fighting with the husband who appears to be over beating a child, in 1964, 1954, 1974, that same woman might have stood down. She might have gently asked her husband to stop beating the child. She might have pleaded with her husband to stop beating the child, as I remember my mother did. I remember my mother pleading with my father to not beat us like that. But in that era, in those times, that's about all she could do. She was powerless, and she felt powerless against the strong, brawny machismo of 1960s manhood. But there are women, there are YouTubers that will come on YouTube today and act like they would have responded in 1964 the way they want to respond today. That they would have stepped to a man in 1964 like they would step to a man in 2025. They don't put no context on women from a far gone era. They don't put no context on it. They act like Khalil Amani was beaten yesterday. And they talk that shit about what they would have done if their child was being abused or beat by their father. And they didn't like it. That same raggedy ass mentality you hear black folk talk about what they would have done if they was in slavery. Like they really knew, based on how they lived in the cozy, comfy confines of their house, of their apartment in 2025, how they would have reacted in 1861. In the antebellum South of America, under that peculiar institution known as American slavery. Oh, there's people out there. There are black people today that would absolutely tell you that they wouldn't have been a slave, that they would have been a rebel, that they would have did this, that, and other thing. They would have murdered or killed or unalived the master. They would have fought back. Oh, they're absolutely out there. We don't know. You don't know what kind of Negro, what kind of Negra, what kind of pickaninny, what kind of spirit chucker. You don't know what kind of slave you would have been based on you living here today. And so my father was a man of his times. And I'm not saying that all black fathers were physically abusive to their children in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Because in fact and indeed, that's not the case. Because I got a whole wife out there who's 6 years older than I, who tells some of the most wonderful and glowing stories about her father. I joke and tease her that her father was, and her family was like the black Brady Bunch. Was like the black Leave It to Beaver. Some of you don't know who the Brady Bunch are. Some of you don't know who Leave It to Beaver, that TV show, was. They were like the black Partridge Family. They were like the black Father Knows Best. Those are old TV shows. My wife's family, it was like watching the Cosbys of the 1980s. So when I talk about the generalization of how black men treated their children, it's a generalization not to be heaped on every black man, because I'm sure, as I've told you with my own wife, there were plenty of good black fathers out there that were loving and kind and gentle toward their wives and children. I just happen not to be in that number. I don't know that. I don't know my father's gentle touch and his kindness and consideration. There never was a day in 18 years of living with my dad where we wrestled on the living room floor. There never was a day where he held my hand as a 3-year-old. There never was a day where I rode on my father's back on the living room floor. There never was a day where my father took me to a ball game and bought me popcorn. My father never took me to a movie, a theater. My father never took me to the carnival and rode beside me on a Ferris wheel. My father never came to see me when I was a young actor and when I played the violin in the orchestra. My father never came to see me as a saxophonist in the concert band or a saxophonist in the marching band. I don't have that kind of father. And there's a part of me that would suggest that not having a father in the home might be better than having a father who's unemotional and unavailable for his children's care and consideration. Did you hear what I said? There is a strong part of me that would suggest that it might be better to be fatherless than to have a father in the home who's emotionally unavailable to his children. I don't know which is worse. Never having a father in the home or having a father in the home who is emotionally unavailable, emotionally unattached to his babies. And the example that I've given time and time again is, imagine a 5-year-old, 6-year-old child being shown ice cream and cake every day of his childhood. He comes home and there's ice cream and cake set in front of him, but he is told you can never taste it. You can only look at the ice cream. You can only look at the cake. That's the analogy I make to having a father in the home who is emotionally unavailable, who is distant and standoffish to his children. It's like having ice cream and cake set before a 6-year-old, only to be told, don't you dare touch it. Don't you dare have a bite of ice cream. Don't you dare have a bite of cake. Just look at the cake. Your father, the unavailable and unemotional father, he's the cake and ice cream that you can only look at that man. Just look at your daddy, but you dare not have an interaction with that man. Shit, I might well just not have a father. I don't want to look at ice cream and cake every day and I can't taste it. That shit is emotional abuse. You're going to make a child look at ice cream and cake every day, but he can't have none? That's what it's like when you have a father who is unemotional and emotionally unavailable. Hands off and standoffish. He might as well not be there. And then the child don't have to worry about looking at the ice cream and cake every day. He don't have to worry about looking at his daddy every day, knowing he can't go sit on his daddy's lap, knowing he can't go jump on daddy's back. But I submit to you, look at the time, that was a different era. And that a lot of men, a lot of black men, they didn't know how to parent. They simply didn't know how to parent. There's a really good video I just thought about. I'm going to see if I can bring it up real quick on YouTube. About a son who wants to know if his father loves him. It's a good example about the sign of the times. Let me see, James Earl Jones and also, what's his name? Denzel Washington. They both did that. Jones and Denzel. Fences, that's right. The movie was called Fences. And I think we're going to watch it. Yes, we are. Because it exemplifies what I'm talking about. There was a book. There was a book called Fences. Who was the book by? Let's look it up. Fences. Author. August Wilson, a black playwright and author named August Wilson. He wrote a book that became a Broadway play, and then it became a movie called 50's. And we're going to look at both parts because this clip exemplifies how many black men were raised and brought up in America in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. What I'm trying to do is let you into the mindset of the man that once picked me up by my leg and beat me until I peed. That's right. So we're going to look at, here it is right here. We're going to do the James L. Jones. James L. Jones Fences, where the sun says, "You ain't never liked me." I want you to check out this little clip.
Ask you a question.
What the hell you want to ask me? Mr. Wiki is the one you got the questions for.
How come you ain't never liked me?
Liked you. Who in the hell ever said, I got to like you? What law is there to say, I got to like you? Do you want to stand up in my face and ask me some damn fool-ass question like that? Talking about liking somebody. Come here, boy, when I talk to you. Straighten up, goddammit. Ask you a question. What law is there to say, I got to like you?
None.
All right then. Don't you eat every day? Answer me when I talk to you. Don't you eat every day?
Yeah.
Nigga, as long as you live in my house, you put a sir on the end of it when you talk to me.
Yes, sir.
You eat every day. Yes, sir. Got a roof over your head.
Yes, sir.
And clothes on your back.
Yes, sir.
Why you think that is?
Because of you.
Hell, I know it's because of me. Why do you think that is?
Because you like me.
Like you. I go out of here every morning and bust my butt putting up with them crackers all day long because I like you. You is the biggest fool I ever saw. It is my job. It is my responsibility. You understand that? A man got to take care of his family. You live in my house. You sleep your behind on my bedclothes. You put my food in your belly because you are my son. You are my flesh and blood, not because I like you. It is my duty to take care of you. I owe a responsibility to you. Wait now. Let's get this straight right now. We'll go along any further. I ain't got to like you. Mr. Rand, don't give me my money come payday because he liked me. He give me because he owe me. Now I done give you everything I had to give you. I gave you your life. Your mama and me worked it out between us. And liking your black ass was not a part of the bargain, and don't you try and go through life worried if somebody like you or not. You best make sure that they are doing right by you. You understand what I'm saying, boy?
Yes, sir.
Then you get the hell out of my face and go down to the A&P.
That's powerful. Now we're gonna look at that. We're gonna look at that same one as played by Denzel Washington. Same one, 2006. I Ain't Gotta Like You. This is from the movie. It's the same exact one that you just saw, but it's a different. It's Denzel Washington. And then we'll talk about it.
Can I ask you a question?
The hell you got to ask me, Mr. Stewicki, the one you got the questions for.
How come you ain't never liked me?
Like you? Who the hell said I got to like you? What law is there say I got to like you? Want to stand up in front of my face and ask a damn fool-ass question like that? Talking about liking somebody. Come here, boy, when I talk to you. Straighten up, goddammit. I asked you a question. What law is there say I got to like you?
None.
All right, then. Don't you eat every day? Answer me when I talk to you. Don't you eat every day?
Yeah.
Nigga, as long as you in my house, you put a sir on the end of it when you talk to me.
Yes, sir.
You eat every day.
Yes, sir.
Got a roof over your head.
Yes, sir.
Got clothes on your back.
Yes, sir.
Why you think that is?
Because of you.
Hell, I know it's because of me, but why do you think that is?
Because you like me?
Like you. I go out of here every morning. I bust my butt putting up with them crackers every day because I like you. You're about the biggest fool I ever saw. It's my job. It's my responsibility. A man is supposed to take care of his family. You live in my house, fill your belly with my food, put your behind on my bed because you're my son. Not because I like you, because it's my duty to take care of you. I owe a responsibility to you. Now let's get this straight right here and now before I go along any further. I ain't got to like you. Mr. Rand don't give me my money come payday because he like me. He give it to me because he owe me. Now I don't give you everything I got to give you. I give you your life. Me and your mama worked that out between us, and liking your black ass wasn't part of the bargain. Now don't you go through life worrying about whether somebody like you or not. You best be making sure they're doing right by you. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Then get the hell out of my face and get on down to that A&P.
Okay, there you go. You notice how, you see how the black woman was so submissive when you, at the very end? Yeah. Fix that. All right, let's talk about it. Wonderful, wonderful movie. And I feel the fathers, but I also feel for the children, that child, that young man. But this is about an era in which black men were raised where it was all about respect, and they didn't have the touchy-feeliness, the cuddling and hugging and kissy-kissy, hands-on mentality that we, at least a later generation of men, of black men, would adopt. Again, this is a general understanding of black men in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Not all black men were hardcore like this. Okay? Okay. But if you were raised in black Americana, there's a great chance that you saw James Earl Jones and Denzel Washington. You saw this type of fathering, and this type of fathering was my father. He didn't give a fuck about love or liking us. And believe it or not, I once heard my mother and father in conversation on this subject. And I heard my mother say, "Oh, Leroy, I know you love your kids. You love your children." And I heard my daddy say, "I love them enough to whip their ass." I still remember this. This is how hardcore it was to be a black man in America in the 20th century. My mother, I remember this conversation. My mother told my father, "Oh, Leroy, I know you love those boys. Oh, Leroy, you love your children." And he didn't say, "Of course I love my babies." Something I would have said. "Of course I love my children." My father retorted. My father replied, "I love them enough to beat their asses." Jesus Christ. But that's where black men came from. And this is why the young man was angry and mad and had resentment against his father. Because the young man, the child, the boy, he did not ask to be brought into this world, and all he was looking for is love and to be liked by his own black father. Yet his father, Denzel, his father, the other actor, they couldn't give him that little piece of joy. Shit is crazy. That shit is crazy. I said that shit is crazy. What's going on in the psyche of black men that they can't even say, I love my children? What's going on in the psyche of black men that they can't say, I even like my children? Did you hear the soliloquy? Did you hear the diatribe given by these two actors to that son? They went all around the mulberry bush about what they have to do and manhood and respect and what Mr. Charlie gonna pay him and they don't have to like him and all this bullshit. All that son, all that child wanted to do is know that daddy liked me and loved me. And they couldn't get that. He couldn't get that. The young man couldn't get, I like you, son. They never said, I like you, son. As a matter of fact, the father says, whoever said, I gotta like you? My God. My God. But this was my father. A stern disciplinarian. Listen as they say, you put food on your table and a roof over your head. That's what black fatherhood was about in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. It wasn't about liking your children. It wasn't about loving your children. It was about doing the right thing for your children. Now, granted, I know that these fathers love their children, but to say it was damn near anathema. For a black man to say, I love you, son, was damn near taboo. Because you got to realize that these black men, they come from other black men who treated them like shit. They didn't know any better. And even looking at my own father and my grandfather that I never knew, but I come to understand that his father treated him real harsh and stern. That was his image and model of manhood and fatherhood. So when he had me and my siblings, that sternness that you see James Earl Jones and Denzel Washington tongue lash that boy, tongue lash that young man for simply wanting to know that daddy likes me. Yet the black fathers of that era, they couldn't even tell, not all, but many black fathers of that era and that generation, they couldn't even tell their children that they liked them, let alone loved them. Now you have to look. That's why I talk about context. Believe me when I tell you that when James Earl Jones and Denzel Washington, the fathers in those clips, when they went on the job to the white man, you better believe when they talked to the white man, they didn't talk to him like they talked to their sons. When they talked to the white man, they had their heads bowed, and they dare not look the white man eye to eye. And they said, yes, sir, no, sir, Mr. Charlie. On the job, Denzel Washington and James Earl Jones, the two actors in this clip, on the job, they were boys. And they did not get their manhood back until they went home. And so when these men, my father, James Earl Jones, Denzel Washington, in those clips, they had to take their manhood and leave that shit on the kitchen table when they went on the job around white folks, Mr. Charlie and them. And they became boys. And this having to leave their manhood at home and go and become a boy for 8 hours, it bred resentment in them. It It bred resentment in these black men. And they went home, and on many occasions, they took out their resentment on their children and their wives. That's what I've come to understand as a grown man. Why my father was so mean-spirited. Why he was so violent. Because he had to be a boy for Mr. Charlie, even though my father did 20 years in the Air Force and 20 years with the United States Customs. Still, he came from an era where he knew his place around white men. And that resentment from that job, he took it home. And the first person in the house that got on his nerves, that resentment for Mr. Charlie, that resentment for the white power structure, my daddy and many black men took it out on their wives and children. And so you hear this long, drawn-out soliloquy, this long, drawn-out diatribe. Go back and listen to it. Where the young man only wants to know, do you like me, Daddy? He didn't even ask if you love me. And instead of Denzel and James Earl Jones, the father's saying, of course I like you. They flipped the script and told the young man, whoever said, I got to like you. And they went on to say, I worked this shit out between me and your mama, and liking you was not part of the goddamn problem, was not part of the conversation. My God. All James Earl Jones, all Denzel Washington do is say, of course I like you. I even love you. But let me tell you why I'm strong and stern with you. They didn't have the foresight, the foreknowledge to talk gentle and kind to children. And so, I see my father in James Earl Jones. I see my father in Denzel Washington. That was my father all the way. And I told you, I heard my mother tell my dad, oh, Leroy, you love your children. And he said, I love them enough to whip their asses. That's that mentality. Now, the narrative that's out here, and it's my fault because I've only put a negative narrative of my father out here for public consumption. So I don't fault nobody for wanting to, laugh and recount and retell the story of my father picking me up by one leg and whipping my ass until I peed myself. I don't blame people. I put that out there. It happened 61 years ago when I was 4 years old. I would think that smart and intelligent people would know that that singular incident didn't define my relationship with my father, and it didn't. And so in these last 20 minutes, half hour or so, I want to show you pictures of me and my father. Because my father spanked me a couple more times, but I think by the age of 11 years old was the last time that my father whipped me or spanked me. After the age of 11, my father never touched me again. When I got in trouble, it was simply a 3-hour lecture. I don't know which one I hated worse. Just getting a spanking and getting it over with, or having to sit on the living room couch for 3 hours and let him lecture me. I don't know which one was worse. But although my relationship with my father was contemptuous, although it was strained all my 18 years, let's give props and let me give respect to my father for not divorcing my mother, for staying there and allowing me to go from 1st grade to 12th grade and to graduate from high school, he was there. Let's give my father props for putting a roof over my head, food in my stomach, and clothes on my back. He did that for all of my entire childhood. I never went to foster care. There was never no talk of me being adopted. My parents were never on the brink of losing custody. Parental rights were never challenged. We never had CPS, Child Protective Services, DHR, the Department of Human Resources. We never had anybody come to our house checking on us, checking on the welfare of our children, because my father was so violent that they had to call the good white folks to come check on us or remove us from the premises. Let's give my father props. With all that I have ever said or written about my father, he did the damn thing. He was a father to me. Would I have liked to wrestle with my father on the living room floor? Of course I would. Would I have loved to ride on my father's back? Of course I would. Would I have loved for my father to come up and hug me and kiss me on the forehead and say, "I love you, Lloyd"? Of course I would. Would I have loved for my father to be in attendance at my dance recitals, at my orchestra performance, and my band performances? Of course I would. But he wasn't. But as a man, as a parent and a father, he definitely did what was required of him to do to make sure that I have somewhere out of the element of outside, that my stomach, I didn't have no missed meal cramps, no rumblings for food, and I had decent clothes to wear to school. That's more than we can say about some of these parents on YouTube that would point the finger at my father based on what I've said about him. Some of these people on YouTube, they don't even have children. Some of these people on YouTube that talk about my life and my father and me, some of these people have lost children to mothers and to the system. Some of these people that talk about my life have lost children, have lost their parental rights, have children who have been adopted because of their own parental negligence, but feel like they can critique and criticize and deconstruct a 4-year-old child who was held up by one leg and beaten until he peed himself. My father, however troubled my relationship with my father was, and it was troubled until the very end, that I fought for my father's love and attention well into my 50's. I fought for my father to say, "Job well done." When I wrote 6 books, and sent them to my father, autographed each one of them, and then I went to Miami and I stayed with my father for a weekend, and I went into his study, I went into his library just to see my books on his shelf. And I was alarmed that they weren't there. That my father had books on his shelf, auto mechanics, this and that, electronics, all kind of shit, but his own son's books were not on my father's bookshelf. I wanted, even as a father and a grandfather, I wanted my own father's acceptance. I wanted my father to give me an attaboy. I wanted my father's blessings and well wishes. I wanted my father's approval that I had been raised right and I did the right things. And I fought tooth and nail to the end of his life. And I never got that. I never got that. It was simply because that's the man that he was, and that's how he was raised. Children want their fathers and their parents' blessing. Children, we want our father's sons. We want our father's approval. We want our fathers to look at us and say, damn, he did something that no one's done. I have a son who wrote 6 books. But when I went to Miami and went and stayed with my father and saw that my 6 books were not on his shelf, talk about hurt and being dejected and put off. That was really the last straw and the last time that I sought my father's validation. That's the word I was missing. We as children, even in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, if we have parents, we seek the validation of our parents. And I sought the validation of my father for 50 plus years, and I never got it. I never got it. And I've come to understand it was just the era in which he was born. Again, not every black man or every man was like this, but so many black men, they could not validate their children. That I did something greater than my father. My father had a gift for writing as well, but he never published anything. Children are supposed to stand on the shoulders of their parents. We're supposed to be bigger and better and go further than our parents. And in all my accomplishments, my father dropped out of high school in the 11th grade. I graduated from high school. I went on to get 2 college degrees and write 6 books. Yet I never got the validation from daddy, from my father, that, son, you grew up and you went further than me. You finished and got your diploma, your high school diploma. You went to college and finished. You wrote the books. I was a writer too, but I could not publish. You did it, son. But that's the James Earl Jones and the Denzel Washington character you just saw. But I loved my father, however complicated it was. Yeah, I said I hated my father. As a child, I did. I hated him. But as I became a man and grew up and realized the social dynamics and the era in which he lived, and when I understood his father, the things I heard about his father, he was a ladies' man, a drunkard, and a woman beater, an abuser. He didn't take care of his kids. I started seeing shades of that in my own father, and I started to understand that it was cyclic. It was cyclic. And it made me say, even as a young person, I'm going to break the cycle. When I have children one day, I'm going to hug them. I'm going to kiss them. I'm going to wrestle with them. I'm going to put them on my back. I'm going to take them to the circus. I'm going to go to their ball games. I'm going to go to their dance recitals. I'm going to be active. I'm going to be hands-on. I'm not going to be standoffish. I'm going to be ever present in my children's life. And I've done that because I broke the cycle of the standoffish parent. A parent in the household, yet they're standoffish. And so what I want to do right now, to change the narrative that some of you have heard, I'm going to show you some pictures of me and my father. Now granted, I don't have no pictures of me and my father as a child. This medallion right here, my dad was in my home at the time, and this is a professional picture from Olin Mills Photography, but he was so standoffish that he wouldn't even go take a picture with us. He was there, he just didn't want to be involved. And so the first pictures that I have of me and my father, I'm about 27 years old. Yeah, let me show you something. Here's a picture, me and my father, 27 years old, San Diego. I was living in San Diego, and he came out to visit me, and we wore matching cowboy hats, and we took this picture on the Pacific Ocean. One of the few pictures that I have of me and my father. Yes, we were able to be father and son as I became a grown man. Again, we weren't super close, but we had our moments, like this picture here. Here's a picture. I'm there, I'm just not in the picture. And this is my father right there. That's my mother's mother, or my father's mother-in-law. That's my mother's sister, my aunt, and I think I'm the one who took the picture. But we had times together where we were family. That's my dad and his mother-in-law and his sister-in-law. Let me show you a picture that really, it haunts me. It hurts me. And I'm jealous of this next picture. It is a picture of my father and two of my children. The reason why this picture hurts me and haunts me and makes me mad and makes me jealous, the reason why is because my children, these are his grandchildren. These are Khalil Amani's two children. My father has pictures with my children, but he has no pictures with me. And it pisses me off. But when a man gets later on in life, the twilight of his life, he starts softening up and realizing that moments like this are necessary. And to tell you the truth, I believe this was the first time that he met my grandchildren, and that's why they look like they might be a little uncomfortable next to him, because he did not know them. He did not raise them. He had no interaction with these children, but he met two of his grandchildren as an older man. Now, I've been married a couple of times. My first marriage. And I'm showing this to change the narrative that y'all think that the only thing happened between me and my father is that he whipped me by one leg until I peed myself when I was 4 years old. But I grew up. And we had a topsy-turvy relationship. But when I got married, my first wife, when I got married, if I didn't have a relationship with my father, do you think he'd be at my wedding? Well, he was at my wedding, and he stood next to me and sat at the table. There is my father in the brown, my father, me, my wife, my mother-in-law, or my wife's mother, and my father-in-law, or my wife's father. This is at my first wedding. I said I'm changing the narrative that Khalil Amani and his father didn't get along, and all you know about him is him whipping me when I was 4 years old. I loved my father, and he was there for the most important day of my life. My wedding, my marriage to my beautiful first wife, and who we had 2 children. That's right. These 2 children, these 2 children are the product of myself and the woman you see right here, my first wife. There's my dad then, and there's my dad as an older man. Then, and as an older man. Just changing the narrative. This is Khalil Amani's World 100, and I can do that because I don't mind sharing the truth and changing the narrative and letting you see the complete picture of a father who was there on the most important day of my life, getting married to this beautiful woman. Yeah, that was my first marriage. That was that day. That was that day. My first marriage. That was that day. My first marriage. My father was there. Of course, my mother was dead. My mother passed away a year before that. We got married in 1980. My mother died a year before this in 79. That's why my mother is not there. She had passed away. But there they go. Just showing you a little bit about my father. I'm humanizing him. For those of you who think that there was no relationship. Here's a picture. This is my picture of my third wife here in Denver, Colorado. Here we go. It's my father in the white jacket. It's my beautiful wife, third wife in the orange dress. And that's a 38-year-old Khalil. Me and my father and my wife. How about that? So my father was with me at my wedding of my first wife. And here's my father with me with my third wife. Which means that my father and I had a relationship and we checked on each other as best we could, even though our relationship wasn't the greatest of the great. He still wanted to be a part of my life, and I wanted to be a part of his life. Yeah. That's a picture of my father and his second wife after my mother died. This is my father and my stepmother. Okay? I gotta go fast. That's just a picture of my second wife. Those are the same 2 kids you saw with my dad. There they go, with me. I went on to hug, and you can see the joy on my children's faces that you know that their father was hands-on. That I loved them, and I didn't just love them through my actions of feeding and clothing and sheltering them. I had hands-on love. You could see it is genuine. Look at their beautiful smiling faces. This was at the Del Mar Fair in San Diego. We went to a carnival that night. Just me and them. You can see. That's me and my second wife and those same 2 beautiful children of ours. They had a wonderful, beautiful stepmother, and I was a wonderful, beautiful father. Notice that my son, even though he's making the Shanae eyes from In Living Color, being silly as kids are, notice where his hand is on my shoulder. Because we had a touchy, feely relationship. a kissy, huggy, feely relationship. He wasn't afraid to lean up against me and to hug me and to put his arm on my shoulder. That's the dynamic I changed from when I was a child towards my father. Yeah, just showing you a few pictures. Bring the camera down here for these other pictures here. Gotta hurry up. 10 minutes. I hope you're all enjoying this. I said, I hope you're enjoying this. We do these kind of videos. We do wonderful videos. Let me show you. Show you these videos. I'm changing the narrative that my father was unavailable. Here we are. Here we are. Let me bring, hold on a minute. Hold on. Come closer. All right. There we go. Let's see, screenshots. Let's start with that one. There we go. That's me and my father and my brother. I'm not feeling what I'm doing. Sorry about all the movement, people. I'm trying to get this right. Okay, there we go. That's Khalil on the right, and my dad in the middle, and my older brother. In 2004-ish, we're hugging my father. Everything is great. You just saw that picture. That's my mother and my father when they were young, handsome and pretty. They were a beautiful couple. There's me and my daddy. I said, that's me and my father. We're close. I got my arm around him. That's the same picture. That's me and my father and my brother. And those are my daddy's brothers. The man in the white, with the white hair and the black in the back. The man on the left with the blue shirt. The man in front and center. Those are my father's brothers. And there's me and that's my brother. That's my brother right there. And that's me. That's my father. And that's his brother. That's his brother. That's his brother. All four of them are dead now. They've all died. Yeah, these pictures, go past that. This is a picture of myself. This is my mother. And this is my grandmother. So if you want to know where I get my so-called overbite or my buck teeth, I got it from my mama. Who got it from her mama? That's my uncle. This is my brother. This is my daddy's brother. He lived with me before he died. He's dead now, and that's his wife, and she's dead now. But we used to go down to Colorado Springs all the time and party. That's my wife, Wanda, and me. That's my Uncle Joe. My Uncle Joe was the one, this is my daddy's brother. He told me a lot about my father, growing up with my father and all that stuff. This man spent his last about 3 years with me, living in my home with me and my wife. He died with me. I buried my father's brother. I brought him, he was kind of like the dad that I never had, because I was able to connect with him and find out a lot about my father through this man, my Uncle Joe, my father's brother. I didn't even know my father hadn't graduated from high school. He told me that my father dropped out in the 11th grade. That's me and my uncle again. He became my father that I didn't have. That's me and my uncle again. Again, he lived with me until his death. That's my mother right there. And those are her three, those sister, and that's actually that's a niece. That's mother and that's daughter. But that's them in the 70s in the nightclubs. That's my father and that's my uncle. Philadelphia, 1973-ish. I got these pictures. That's the picture you just saw on my necklace. My father was there, but he didn't want to take a picture. As you see, that's me. That's a young Khalil right there. And I adored my mother. I don't care what I wrote about her and said about her. I adored my mother. That's the picture I've shown you already of my children with my father. There I am. That's Khalil right there. I'm not even the baby, but I adored my mother. I don't know how I got the position to be close to my mom like that, but I adored my mother. I think you saw that my mom and dad again. Those are pictures you've seen of me and my daddy. This other pictures. This is a collage of me and my son. My son, this is my son, this is my son, my son, son. Showing you how what kind of father I became. Hands-on, picture-taking, huggy-feely with my own son. The thing that was rejected for me, I didn't do it to my son. This is an interesting picture. This is my mother. She's dead. This is my cousin Terry. He's dead. And that's my father on his birthday, and that's my sister in happier times cutting the cake. That's right. There I am at my wedding. My first wife. I'm married to my first wife. All my friends, some of them. There's my father, my mother, and my auntie. This is my mother's sister. And here they are at a nightclub having drinks. So they had a decent relationship. They did. Context is everything, is what I've been trying to tell you all. My mother loved my father even through the abuse, and my father loved my mother. That's right. And this is a picture of my mother and father's children. That's me, right? That's me right there. And my mama and my daddy took us to Washington, D.C. for summer vacation. Just showing you the real deal. And you've seen that picture. You've seen that picture. What a beautiful picture. That's my daddy. And that's my stepmother. That's his second wife. And there's my daddy and his stepwife. My daddy and my stepmother, his second wife. And there's me, same day, with my daddy. And my daddy has his arm around me. See? I said my daddy. I said my daddy has his arm around me. Okay? You've seen that and you've done that one. That's my grandmother, my daddy's mother. And you've seen that one. I'm just making sure we got them all. Okay, and there's my father. That's my handsome daddy. He was a very handsome man, I must say. Okay.